So why don't we begin with you talking about the title that you had in 1981 and like how you got into that position?
I was technical director for that event. Technical directors determine what videos going on the air. If there's to be any special effects, such as a character generator or a box inside a box, and that was my responsibility. But I followed the directions of the actual director of the show. What he chose what cameras he wanted to have go out. So I would listen to him and I would punch up whatever camera. So my encounter there with Mr. Brokaw was we had to set up really early. The Today Show starts at 7 in the morning. And he was anchor on Today's Show. And so we had run cables and everything all over the place. And it was still a little dark outside. But I was checking out this equipment because we were renting a new remote trailer with a control room in it. So I had to go over the stuff to make sure I knew how it worked. And I hear a voice behind me, a real deep voice saying, "What time does the sun come up?" And so he started asking questions right away. He wanted to know a few things. And of course, they were going to be sitting outside of the Ford Museum doing this. Might as well mention that ABC had a show in the morning, Good Morning America, whatever it was, with David Hartman. And his crew, our rival station in town, was doing his stuff somewhere else. And Mr. Brokaw asked me about that. The museum is located on the river that goes through downtown. He was asking me about some of the buildings, and he was asking me about what were they fishing for out there, because you could see guys and waders out there, and I told him, well, they're fishing for salmon. The salmon run is on, they're coming upstream to spawn. That's about the extent of our interaction, little chit chat kind of stuff. And he was the Today Show anchor. So he had yet to become the main nightly news anchor. Previously to that, he was in town when Gerald R. Ford was president as the NBC correspondent. Also when Gerald R. Ford was vice president. So Gerald R. Ford brought a lot of network reporters to town. And they would show up at the station and you would interact with them. A lot of their stuff had to be done live, so you had to get it right. And we also, at our newscast we did, a lot of the external stuff was being done live by that point in time, meaning a guy was out there with a miniature camera on his shoulder, and he could videotape that, or he could send it back via a microwave, which we would pick up. Then you could do live reporting. So I hope that helps with what I was doing at that time.
Okay. What would you say like the typical situation was at Wood TV? Like what was your typical day-to-day experience, or was it kind of just varied?
Well, I also was a technical director on our newscasts in the evening, which time I think by then we were doing just an hour news at 6 o'clock, and then we would hand it over to the network for their news. Then we would do another news at 11 o'clock. That was my shift. I would be there from the afternoon to 11:30, midnight before I go home. I like doing that in the summer because that gave me the days off. During the day, we could go do stuff and with everybody, you know, and then I had to be back into work by 4. So we got a lot of stuff packed into a day. I actually did this. I actually did sleep from midnight or whatever to whatever in the morning. So,
What?
but technical directing at the newscast, I had to take care of the getting the right stuff from the character generator on the air. What we call a still store, which we would use to put little things up beside the anchor that corresponded to what they were talking about. And I would do some special effects too. We would have a couple reporters in boxes, you know, talking from somewhere. I was in charge of what was coming in, and that would go through this big switcher I had and then go on the air. Had a lot of fun doing that. And some of the year during the winter, I would actually take the day shift and do it during the day. And that's what was going on with Mr. Brokaw showed up when we did that Ford Museum thing. It was a big deal for a little town. And Gerald R. Ford brought a lot of news interest to our town, of course. That year, I might mention 81, earlier in the year, there was a assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, which he survived just barely. So the Ford Museum dedication was in the late in the year, I think it was September, and the Secret Service guys were, of course, looking at everybody, including me, like we were a possible assassin. That's the way they have to operate. And I got scared a couple times because I wanted to go somewhere and adjust a cable or something, and I'd get grabbed, you know. And one time I was told, well, go through the metal detector, go through it. I don't have time, I said. So he grabbed me, and I thought, oh boy, what's going to happen? And he took a portable magnetic detector, went all over my body before he would let me in. And the interesting thing was, that same fellow had seen me working all afternoon, or I should say all morning. So the Today Show, a couple-hour show, then we actually did uplinking to Europe and elsewhere for the actual dedication later in the day. So whatever we were doing was being seen all around the world. And in addition to the fact that Ronald Reagan was there for the dedication and Jimmy Carter was there, you had foreign heads of state there. And I remember a meeting with the Secret Service guys saying this is preceding the week of this thing. They were really mad. How could you think of putting all those important people in one little place? You know, what if a bomb went off? That kind of stuff. So I can understand why they were jittery. You know. So the highlight of some of my experiences with presidents actually was getting scared of the Secret Service. It happened once before with Richard Nixon when he was running for president.
You got to
Everything
talking,
seemed to
right?
be okay, and we were told to go up the elevator to interview him. And we started pushing our equipment out of the floor we were told to go to, which was ninth floor. And a guy stood out there with his hands on his hips saying, "Where do you think you're going?" And my partner, who was the actual photographer, I was the sound man, muttered something. I swore. He said, "Well, we're up here to shoot the guy. What do you think?" You know, and I thought, oh, my heart sank. And so it was a very lively kind of career I had there. A little more sedate at the PBS station, but and working with our own reporters at the NBC station, we would know how they had to um, set up their interviews so that they would get basically what amounted to a minute or two that went on the air, but they had to know how to frame their questions so they could get it edited down and still get the meaning of it on the air. Then there were the long form programs when you would have somebody come into the studio to be interviewed at length. We would record that, and that was a special program like Meet the Governor, or in the case of Gerald R. Ford, when he was still in the House of Representatives, he would show up every month. And that that man never had a retinue of people with him. He did not travel that way. He would show up at the door, rain spattered, didn't even have an umbrella, um, walk down the hall with you, chat with you, that kind of stuff. But he was what you called the House Republican minority. They were in the minority during much of the time, and he was the minority leader in the House, sort of akin to, well, not well, he would have been Speaker of the House had they had a majority in the House. So that's how I first met him. I was impressed at his humility. He was not an ego. He was not an ego. He didn't need to feed his ego. So, in that way, my job brought me into contact with people, and I watched how our reporters worked, especially if they got to do a series on something like investigative journalism. And you learned that which one of them went into it was a balanced idea of questioning. Then there were some that seemed to be wanting to make a point, when they were interviewing somebody. Um, and I think we learned who winds up getting on the network itself or got a little more balanced approach to things. So most of the people I knew back then actually came out of the Missouri, uh, University of Missouri School of Journalism. There were a couple from U of M or Michigan State. I don't remember BGSU supplying anybody to our station, but they were
Okay.
like a sister station to us when I was at the PBS station. Uh, then I got to know some of those people. You had a bunch of other questions there.
Yeah, well, I was just listening to you talk.
You get to edit it, I know.
Well, I was wondering, like, since you're talking about investigative reporting, was there any investigative reporting that you remember well from your time there that
Oh yeah.
stood out to you?
Um, we have our various problems now with pollution or police, the people that cause it. Back in those days, there was what they called the PBB contamination, and one of our reporters became well known because he was tackling that all the time, trying to get to the bottom of it. That was a case of it getting into our milk supply. It was a dangerous chemical, phenylbrominated bromo or something like that, PBB. And how did it ever get into the supply of the food supply for the cows? And that was a hard one to pin down because nobody wanted to admit it. But actually, the food supply for the cows went through the state agricultural department. That they controlled the feed mills, and they just wanted to hide from the responsibility. So he kept digging. Always remember him. He's still working there. He's
Oh,
still
wow.
working there over 40 years, almost 50 now. So that's
Wow.
an example I can give you.
Okay. Um, So as your when you were a director, what were some of the people that you worked with on the side, like to help bring bring everything into a finished product to go on TV?
Well, I was a technical director as I tried to explain what I did, but we had an audio engineer. We had people running the cameras. We had people running the videotape area, which in the old days when I first started, the news film, all the news stories were done on film. They had a film processor downstairs for 16 millimeter film. That all had to be put on projectors on what they called a newsreel. And then you had a spot reel, which was commercials. So in my position of running stuff from technical directing, I had to run the projectors remotely, run the tape machines remotely, and the bunch of guys, working together. Floor director was one. He would cue the anchors as when they're going to be on, so they'd be aware of when they're going to be on. And you might have to do something crazy like in those days, we didn't have a character generator. Can you imagine what are you going to do for putting on little things below the at the bottom
Like
of the screen?
title, like the president said this,
And
something
they
like
were
that.
all actually done on camera cards by the art department. And we would have a camera that just was aimed at a easel, like the music stand. And the floor director would put the next card there with somebody's name and with a reporter or where they were at. That's how those things appeared in those days.
Oh, wow.
Then I got a character generator, and oh boy, is this swell, that thing. Uh, and the type of cameras changed over the years. So they were able to do away with film projectors at some point in time. Even our movies and everything started coming in on videotape. Now they're probably coming in on the internet, for the station to use. So I hear right now because of the COVID thing that things are pretty slow at these places. It doesn't seem like it on the air, but just if you can visualize a news set with anchors, they had to build all news sets to keep the separation there. Otherwise you had the old one and people were sitting way off the ends, didn't look right. So they rebuilt stuff. And hopefully they will be able to not have to use that in a year, but we'll see.
Yeah. Do you think it would have been very difficult to have the news if COVID had happened in the 80s or 90s? Like, how do you think that would have worked?
Well, first of all, people at the station had to be careful because of COVID, but you never worried about that kind of thing. They would go anywhere. You didn't have to worry about masks and stuff like that. Um, I'm trying to answer your question better, but staffing has not changed, I don't believe. Um, People want to watch the news. That didn't slow down. People can't go to restaurants, but they still want to watch the news. So you still have a business. So and what goes for PBS is somewhat the same. Although my old friends at the PBS station say it's like a ghost town around here. There's a lot of things they cannot do because of how would you like to watch an interview show where everybody's got masks on? That's about what it would amount to. You can do so much with separation. That's about it. So, uh, new new rules got put back into Michigan by the governor. So I don't know if your people down there, governor has done it too, but new
Yeah,
restrictions or reinstating restrictions.
we have some newer restrictions. We have a curfew now. Basically, you have to like wear a mask. Like you have to wear a mask in all public places because like certain counties or cities didn't have mask rules for a period of time, but now everybody has to, and there's like a squad from the state government that's going to come around and see if employees and people are wearing their masks, which is kind of interesting. In Maumee, there's like the city nearby us, it's about 5 minutes away. There's like these little DeWine heads, like these little posters, and there's like, I'm watching you. We were just in there a few minutes ago, but I didn't see one, but they looked funny
Yeah.
on the news. Um, yeah, it's
Well, you have your experiences, with the fact that you started your freshman year with this thing going on. You finished your senior year with this thing going on.
yeah.
You had vastly different experiences than what your siblings would have had, and the teachers had to adjust too, of course. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd want to teach where I got a bunch of kids in there, and everybody's coming from a different household, and yeah, we can wear masks and all that, but oh well.
Yeah. Well, you seem to like Zoom, and this is what most of my classes are on. And you
Yeah,
can have a like on the screen, you can also have like a PowerPoint slide and stuff too. So it's pretty versatile.
yeah.
I like it.
Well, the digital world came into being when I was still working. I had to learn some of that stuff,
Mhm.
and I learned a lot of things because I had to, otherwise.
Yeah.
But I
Is
was
there,
grateful for the opportunity I had, which was a strange thing that happened when uh, your grandma got me to write the main stations in town saying I would like a job as an engineer. Here's my qualifications. And I just said, no, you don't start out on one of the main stations. I'm just starting. And every one of them, I got a response of every one of them wanted to interview me. So the first
wow.
one I got was the first one I went, the only interview I went to because I was hired. And I look back upon that and boy, how did that happen? If I hadn't listened to a little birdie, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Do you ever have moments like that?
Yeah, for sure. Like if I hadn't been in that space or that time, or if I hadn't listened to that person, my whole life would have been different.
Well, I might mention something I learned from some of our reporters about little birdies. It seems like a lot of them over the years develop contacts, anonymous contacts that would let them know if something's going on. And one night, I was looking out the windows and checking the windows in one of the bedrooms, and I saw this huge red glow in the sky. I knew it was something going on. I turned on the scanner, and there was a fire department was just going crazy. So I called the investigative reporter. He's this guy that's still working there that I mentioned. Well, he says I never get contact. A guy that keeps track of the fire department uh, wasn't able to didn't even have time to get in touch with me. He was too busy. So he had a stringer or whatever you want to call him in the fire department, let him know something big was going on so he could get there and cover it. I did get a big attaboy from the news director for basically calling this investigative reporter at home to tell him about what was going on. Otherwise, they might not have gotten there and shot a lot of videos. So,
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. We did a little bit of that too, letting our reporters know something's going on with somewhere, or did you know?
Mhm.
That happens a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, and you still do that with the weather people, right? You measure the rain and
Oh,
report that,
yeah, yeah.
and so
The weathermen, of course we interact with them, you know. I'm still friends with a man who's 93 years old, who was the weatherman. And we used to go to lunch every 2 weeks, which we're not doing now, but some lifelong things going on there. My friends were from broadcast industry, a lot of them. So good
yeah,
career.
yeah.
I don't know if you mind me going off on a tangent, but in my
No, go
own
ahead.
education in college, my major was sociology. But one of the things that they do and sociologists do is they construct surveys and they try to construct a survey which has questions in it which do not beg for an answer they want. They want to be as neutral as they can in the question. So not to provoke something, just to get an answer. So I learned how to construct them. They were very important things to do. I loved that class. And I thought about it over and over again. Why didn't I go into the survey business? Well, it's important. It's important, They have pollsters. Well, what kind of questions do the pollsters ask, What kind of questions do the people that work for NBC News ask to figure out, if they're getting a straight answer as to how things are going or not? So that was a that was a nice thing I had in college. I always remember, of course. So
Yeah, you could have been like a pollster and called into all the news places. That would have been cool.
yeah, I had my English my English minor was strong enough to be a major at other colleges. It was just a very demanding college we went to, and I think it was 27 hours, semester hours for my minor. Where a lot of places would, if you hit 30, you had a major, semester hours. So I don't even know what you do anymore. Are they trimesters or?
No, it's hours still. I think journalism's like 36 or something like that, and art's crazy for, I'm not sure if I'll do that specific one for art, but I know um like the Bachelor of Fine Arts is 93 hours, which is just a lot.
A year ago or more, I was interested in what kind of programming BGSU was doing in the way of interview programs. Did they have a weekly thing they would do that was political in nature, let's say, to interview people, people who held office or not? I got to know an engineer there because of that, and also a production manager at the time. So as it was, we were able to get you into the place I used to work at, the PBS station, to shadow a couple of people.
Yeah.
They are still working there. They
Yeah.
still have their shows. They still have an audience. So
Yeah, I still follow them on LinkedIn and see what they're up to sometimes.
yeah,
Kind of fun.
yeah, they do streaming. Streaming stuff. You can watch anything anytime, or the radio part. Listen to it anytime. So
Yeah.
listen to their shows.
Yeah.
Um, I had a guy named Anthony, happens to be a grandson, explain streaming to me, and it made sense finally. How do they stream? How do they do that so that anybody anywhere? Well, this is more into video streaming, but if you and I want to watch a movie,
Mhm.
well, you want to watch it at a different time than I do. How does that work?
Yeah. I
Explain
I
it to me.
I remember, like, mom was telling me this story of when I was in the car and I was really confused about how the radio worked and how the singers like were able to go from different stations to sing. And I was like, she asked me if I ever wanted to be a singer at all. And I said, no, I just think I get too tired having to sing on the radio all day,
Oh,
you know? And she's like, "That's not how it works." I didn't understand that it was pre-recorded. I thought it was all
well, I
live.
thought I mentioned something that I realized that people who had been to journalism school were reporters for the NBC station that I worked with. Three of them actually got jobs as public affairs directors for hospitals in town. You had to have a public, a spokesperson for the hospital. And three different people at the three different hospitals came from that station. So they had they used their reputation and skills to get those jobs. So they would interface with reporters from another angle then, right? They were the ones the reporters wanted to hear what's going on at Mercy Hospital or whatever. So tables got turned a little bit, but they knew what to do.
Yeah. Well, I think all of this has been really good. You answered all my questions and even more that I didn't think about.
Well, I knew I could overwhelm people with stuff.